The communist left always hurts the very people they pretend to help. Under the disaster known as Bidenomics, Hispanic Americans, African Americans, and young people are hurting like never before. The Biden economy, 1/3 of the Gen Z and millennials have absolutely no savings, nothing whatsoever. Home ownership has been pushed out of reach for millions, with the rate for a 30-year mortgage up 157% and going much higher. Real wages collapsed 26 months in a row, and that's a record. Typical Americans have seen their incomes crushed by $7,400 a year since Biden took office, the biggest pay cut in many decades. Credit card debt has just reached an all-time high, with American consumers owing nearly $1 trillion on their credit card bills, up 17% from just a year ago, one of the largest increases in history. This is an economic calamity and a human tragedy. Very sad to watch. My mission is to rescue hardworking families from the nightmare of Bidenomics and restore the American dream, something you don't hear too much about anymore. And that's going to be restored for you and for everyone you love. Under Trump, every policy is about making life better and more affordable for hardworking American families. So to every American who is struggling under crooked Joe Biden, and he is indeed crooked, the most crooked president we've ever had, help is on the way. I am fighting for you as hard as I can. We're doing a job. Together we will make America wealthy again, and we will make America great again.
Not quite sure where to begin here. This is Donald Trump telling so many lies and misrepresentations in a span of 2 minutes that it would be mind-boggling if it weren't also what he does every time he opens his mouth. He starts by saying that Hispanic Americans, African Americans, and young people are hurting like never before. In reality, unemployment is the lowest it's been in 50 years. If you were born in 1970 or later, you have literally never lived during a time when the unemployment rate was lower than it is today. Not only is that across the board, but the Black and Hispanic unemployment rates are also at record lows. There's also never been more Black and Hispanic Americans in the workforce than there are right now. And as for young people, a recent study from the Economic Policy Institute shows that the class of 2023 is graduating into a stronger labor market than young workers at any time in the past 70 years. So if this is what hurting like never before looks like to Trump, I'd really love to know what he thinks prosperity actually looks like. Although it certainly is interesting that he's assailing this economy, all the while having bragged about the stock market and corporate profits while Americans waited in food lines and unemployment lines in 2020 during a recession that was fueled by his horrific handling of the pandemic. So I guess good economies are bad economies when Democrats oversee them, and bad economies are good economies when Republicans oversee them. He then goes on to talk about people not having savings, and while obviously there's still a lot more to do to help reduce income inequality and give the working and middle class a bigger share of the pie and more bargaining power in this economy, I don't think the guy who wants to cut Social Security and Medicare, leaving seniors without the safety net that literally keeps them alive, should be talking about the struggles of low-income Americans. And don't just take my word for it. Here's a montage of Republicans, including Donald Trump, saying on camera that they want to cut Social Security and Medicare.
So that would potentially sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security.
Let's talk about Medicare.
But Senator, hang on.
John.
So it's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
Entitlements ever be on your plate?
At some point they will be. That's actually the easiest of all things, if you look.
We should try to look at entitlements, look at restructuring Medicare.
What they need to be doing is looking at entitlements. Look at Social Security. Look at Medicaid. Look at Medicare.
Turning Medicare into a voucher system.
It's a really good start.
Our entitlement programs, there's no doubt that we have to wrestle this beast to the ground.
What's going on with the debt?
It's very disturbing, and it's driven by the three big entitlement programs that are very popular: Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. Hopefully, at some point here, we'll get serious about this.
I'm here right now to tell you one thing that you probably haven't ever heard from a politician. It will be my objective to phase out Social Security, to pull it up by the roots and get rid of it.
Tell me if you're willing to cut spending for Social Security.
I think everything has to be on the table.
So you are willing to cut
money?
I
think it's absolutely imperative.
What about Medicare?
I think it's absolutely imperative, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid.
So look, while the economy has made incredible gains recently with surging GDP, falling inflation, and record low unemployment, there's still more left to do, especially for workers in the bottom half of the income ladder. But the idea that Donald Trump, or any Republican for that matter, is going to fight for for those people is just absolutely laughable. This is the guy whose main legislative accomplishment during 4 years in office was to pass trillions in tax cuts skewed expressly for the wealthy and big corporations. If Trump was any deeper in the tank for the richest Americans, he would start drowning. Trump also claims that real wages collapsed 26 months in a row. This is an abject lie. Real wages have been steadily rising since the recession that Trump helped cause with his horrific handling of the pandemic. In fact, real wages are now up over the past year, and for the first time, we're actually starting to see real wages outpace inflation. Trump then goes on to blame Biden for inflation with the standard spate of lies that you hear from Republicans. Let's make it really simple. Inflation was caused by a confluence of COVID and resulting supply chain issues, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and blatant corporate price gouging. The entire world faced these problems. The question is, which countries handled it best? And we don't have to guess because each country's respective inflation rate will help answer that question. So let's take a look at the latest inflation rates around the world. Argentina, 116%, Turkey, 38%, the UK, 8.7%, Australia, 7%, Italy, Germany, and South Africa all within the 6% range, the Netherlands, Singapore, and Mexico all within the 5% range, India and France within 4%, Indonesia, Canada, Japan, Russia, and Brazil all within the 3% range, and finally, the United States of America at 2.97%. So if you're wondering how the US is performing now relative to the rest of the world, you just got your answer. So let's be perfectly clear. Donald Trump handled COVID terribly and handed a shattered economy to Joe Biden. Biden inherited that economy, passed the American Rescue Plan, which immediately led to skyrocketing job growth, along with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the CHIPS and Sciences Act, which created more jobs, and then the Inflation Reduction Act was passed to bring down costs, all of which is legislation that we're now feeling the effects of today with job growth still historically strong and costs finally falling. Meanwhile, every single Republican voted against the Inflation Reduction Act precisely because they didn't want to see this happen. They want Americans to suffer if it means they can use it to their political benefit. And before you think, well, both parties do that, think about this. While Trump was president, every Democrat voted for the CARES Act to give relief to Americans, even though doing so would help Donald Trump. But while Biden's been president, 0 Republicans voted for the American Rescue Plan or the Inflation Reduction Act because hurting Biden is more important to them than helping Americans. All of which is to say, no, both parties are not the same. The Republican Party is hell-bent on making things worse for Americans so they can blame Joe Biden and then seize power for themselves, only to then turn around and do nothing to actually improve the economy, but they will implement trickle-down economics like their $2 trillion handouts skewed for the wealthy because at the end of the day, that is their priority. The fact is that it was Democrats who passed relief and investments that go directly to Americans, and we're finally seeing the results of that play out with falling inflation, unemployment at historic lows, and a historic stretch of job growth. Democrats finally took on the Reaganomic lies that have crippled the middle class for decades now. Is the economy perfect? Of course not. But real wages are rising, Medicare is finally negotiating lower drug prices despite every Republican voting against it, Democrats even brought a standalone bill to simply cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month, and Republicans still voted against it. Meanwhile, what are Republicans passing right now in the House majority? A defense spending bill that restricts abortion access, targets trans Americans, and bans diversity training. It is a complete clown show, and that is by design, because Kevin McCarthy conceded any power he could have had to secure the support of extreme MAGA politicians like Marjorie Taylor Greene. There is one serious political party in this country, and then there's one that doesn't give a shit about you and is actively trying to harm the economy and deny rights to millions of Americans. Despite the both sidesism and distractions you may hear from some in the media, the contrast really is that clear. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.